The sandstorms of Erythra Prime howled through the decaying husks of warships like the dying breath of a long-rotted era. Across the barren ground, littered with scorched fragments of twisted metal, a tall figure stood motionless in the heart of the scrapyard. Kael Draven squinted, brow furrowed against the blood-red sunset bleeding across the twin suns of this forsaken planet. Ultraviolet rays pierced the thin layer of dust in the air, glinting off his sun-worn skin and the weathered leather coat. The only thing shielding him from the metal-biting cold that descended at nightfall. Before him lay the shattered remains of a device, wreckage from the Second Lavari War. Once a military-grade quantum thrust stabilizer, it was now nothing more than volatile junk, waiting to explode if mishandled by a single wrong sequence. Kael crouched, pulling an outdated scan module from his jacket pocket. It beeped, slowly, rhythmically, like the heartbeat of someone too stubborn to die amid the cast-offs of history. Value, unclear. Detonation risk, 86%. Kael smirked. Perfect, he muttered, then leaned in and began to dismantle the circuitry with his bare hands. The new Helion scrapyard wasn't made for the faint of heart. It was a graveyard for exiled ships, abandoned tech. But to Kael, it was sacred ground. No one knew why a human from Earth lived alone on the galaxy's edge, calling himself a free engineer. Kael didn't care. He didn't need approval. Give him one functioning chip, one spark of life in a dead engine, and no matter how forgotten the universe had made him, he would live to make it remember. He reached for the device's core, fingers drawing a precise line to pry open the casing. As his hand touched the energy chamber, an arc flash ignited, searing the edge of his glove. Damn it, Kael hissed through gritted teeth, but his eyes lit up. It still worked. While he carefully welded the main conduit, a faint sound stirred behind him. The soft, steady hum of a hovering engine, too smooth, too deliberate, as if someone was silently floating behind him. He turned. A feminine figure glided toward him, long violet hair cascading behind, metallic hues glimmering faintly beneath glowing green skin kissed by the fading light. She sat in a medical-class Lavari hovercraft, unarmed, unescorted, only those eyes. Cautious yet curious. Kael said nothing. He simply stood there silent, staring at the strange being who had pierced his world of rust and ruin with something far more disruptive. A living presence. Some meetings are not born of fate, but of two souls, weary of existing alone in the vast, indifferent galaxy. The air between them thickened, as if even the sunset was holding its breath. Kael stood still. He'd seen many alien species, and from the stone-faced Gorth to the three-eyed Rukar smugglers, but her, she was different. She didn't speak. She simply hovered a few inches above the ground in a Lavari-class medical skimmer, the kind reserved for severe disability cases. The silver-violet glow of the gravity field cast a cold, quiet halo across her face. Her eyes, the molten gold and slow-burning, didn't waver from Kael, not even for a second. Not with fear, but with calculation. The kind of look survivors wear after being hunted, always ready to activate self-defense. This scrapyard closes at 1800 hours. If you don't have an engineer's permit, I have the right to report you to the security outpost. Her voice was clear, soft, but colder than the metal beneath his boots. Kael raised an eyebrow, then smirked. And what if I told you I'm diffusing something that could explode in the hands of any rookie dumb enough to walk in here? No reaction. He inhaled, gesturing to the wrecked device nearby. Old model quantum core. Unstable resonance. You sure you want to leave that sitting here overnight? Silence. Until she let out a soft exhale and switched off the vehicle's warning system. I'm Selene Veyra, newly transferred warehouse supervisor from Lavari Station 7 Inches. And you are Kael Draven, the man whose applications to recover restricted salvage have been denied 8 times. Kael chuckled. I prefer to call myself a resurrector of forgotten tech. She arched a brow. Junk is still junk, no matter how noble you wrap it. Kael took a step toward the skimmer, not too close, just enough to avoid being a threat. He lightly flipped open the control panel, his eyes scanning the system. You're using an outdated gravity unit. It's overloaded. Her hand tightened on the edge of her seat. Half her instincts screamed, don't let him touch anything. But the other half was tired. Tired of sterile engineers who treated her like a failed prototype. Tired of pity veiled behind polite expressions. Tired of 11 years, and still no feeling in her legs. Selene gave a small nod. Kael crouched, opened the gravity housing, and used his old battered repair module. Silence. Only the gentle chime of metal, like night wind. 5 minutes passed. The hum shifted, smoother, quieter, stabilized. Done, Kael stood. You can now glide halfway around the planet without blowing up. Selene tested the controls. The skimmer turned left, right, spun a full 180. Smooth as a bird's wing. For the first time in months, no warning alarms blared. Thank you, she murmured, though she didn't fully understand why. Selena, Kael said, his voice lowering, I'm working on something insane, a prototype. She looked up, her sharp gaze returned. It's dangerous, maybe illegal, maybe worthless, but... He paused. It might make someone like you walk again. Her heart skipped. Just an invitation, he said. My workshop's nearby if you're curious. He turned away, not waiting for a response. She was used to empty promises, but no one had ever spoken to her. With eyes that honest, and sometimes change begins. With a step no one dares to take, Selene sat in silence for a long time after Kael left. She remained in her hovercraft, not starting it right away, just staring after his silhouette as it shrank between the towering wrecks and the blazing sunset sky. She had met many humans before, cold, curious, politely condescending. But Kael's eyes, they held something else. Something that wasn't pity and wasn't admiration either. It was contrast, and that more than anything was what terrified her. Night fell. The scrapyard shifted like a sleeping beast, energy pylons whining in the wind, faint red glows flickering from half-dead emitters buried in the junk. Selene quietly powered up her skimmer and followed the coordinates Kael had left in the nav system. Part of her remained guarded, but deeper still, another part wanted to know if he was truly insane enough to build legs for someone who no longer had any left to walk. Kael's workshop was a repurposed container at the edge of the junk fields. But when the door slid open, Selene could no longer call it a workshop. It was a living universe of creation. A soft blue light spilled from suspended plasma crystals lining the ceiling. The walls were covered in hand-drawn schematics, from simple pressure valves to intricate neurofiber-integrated exoskeletal limbs, ended the quiet space. There was only one sound, the sound of life. Kael stood in the center, sleeves rolled up, black grease streaked across his face, eyes locked on a suspended prototype leg hovering midair. I'm not sure this thing will even work. But if it does, you'll be the first being to ever walk using tech no one else dared to test. Selene slowly moved around the space. Everything here defied Lavari engineering logic, chaotic, unstructured, but alive. She stopped before a handwritten blueprint labeled Neural Integration version 3.5 for her. She turned back, voice quieter. You really did all of this for me? Kael didn't answer right away. He simply stepped forward and held out a compact handheld device, an external neural modulator. Just a few connections, if you'll let me. Selene hesitated, then slowly reached out, placing the device in his open hand. A soft touch. Both of them paused, not because of the current, but because of something else. Something small, something unclear, but real. She sat down in the mechanical chair. Kael attached the device to the side of her hovercraft, eyes never leaving her face. Selene, if you agree, we start tomorrow. She met his eyes. I've been sitting here for 11 years, waiting for a miracle, but maybe what I really needed wasn't a miracle. It was someone crazy enough to believe I could still stand. Not everyone with broken wings gives up the sky. Some legs weren't made to run. They were made to lead the way into a future the galaxy has never seen. Acid rain pattered gently across the roof of the repurposed container. Inside, Kael was soldering a signal conduit, the soft crackling from the welding tip flaring blue reflections across his face, like flickering fragments of old memories. Selene sat quietly at the workbench. In her hands was a knee-joint prototype. Small but exquisitely intricate, it was a part of the leg system nearing completion. Kael had given it to her that morning. No words, just a single laser-etched inscription along the edge. For the day she walks again. Selene, Kael said quietly without lifting his head, I need to better understand how your body reacts to gravitational pressure, especially around the lower pelvic frame. No answer. He turned and found Selene staring at a corner of the wall, at an old map, its left corner singed. A faint crack ran across the region labeled Zarif 4. Was it there? Kael asked, his voice low. Selene nodded, slowly. She closed her eyes and then her voice came, light as confession. I was a level 3 pressure engineer at the Terra Bloom 9 climate station. It was a joint project between Lavari and Earth Core conglomerate. They were testing a new atmospheric processor, unapproved by the medical council, failed all safety thresholds. But they ran it anyway, trying to impress the Interstellar Budget Board. She paused, drawing a deep breath. I was the last one still standing, trying to shut the pressure valve. 3 others were already dead before I could activate the shield. I survived, but my legs didn't. Kael didn't interrupt. He simply stood by the bench, hands resting flat, eyes fixed on her. Not with pity, not with sympathy. Just presence. They called it an occupational hazard. I got compensation. I was put in a rehab program. They gave me a hover chair, then reassigned me to this outer planet to oversee inventory. Her voice faded. But the truth is, I wasn't exiled, Kael. I chose this place because here, no one looks at me like I'm a Lavari with broken wings. Silence stretched long and steady. Kael stepped closer. He didn't say, I'm sorry. He didn't ask, why didn't you sue? He simply placed a hollow slate in front of her. revealing a new integrated neural schema redesigned to match Lavari physiology. You once saved an entire climate station from blowing up. Now it's my turn to save your legs. Selene stared into the projection, then looked at Kael. For the first time, a tear slipped down her cheek. Quiet, unnoticed. Not from regret, not from rage, but because someone finally believed she was worth helping walk again. Some scars don't live on the skin. They live in the places we were once left behind. And sometimes, it's from those very places that the quietest revolutions begin. A week passed. The mornings on Erythra Prime still burned red like fire, and the air still hung thick, as if the planet itself was gasping through layers of radioactive dust. But inside the weathered silver container at the edge of the scrapyard, time had started moving to a different rhythm. Selene tied her hair back, resecured the assisted response module clipped to her side. She no longer called this place Kael's workshop. Since the night she told him about Terra Bloom 9, this space had become something else, something closer to a sanctuary, a temple where belief in herself was being rebuilt piece by piece, with every line drawn, every measurement taken, every charge sent through the circuits of synthetic life. Kael sat at the central desk doing what he did best, drawing things no one else dared to believe would work. The walls were covered in blueprints, Lavari mimetic skeletal frames integrated with artificial smooth muscle, instant response sensory cores, wired directly into tactile nerve receptors, quantum switch interfaces, reverse engineered from an ancient locator relic salvaged during the war. Selene stepped closer, pointing to a corner of one schematic. The junction between the Lavari neuron cluster and this quantum stream needs a stabilized feedback buffer. The old model's too slow. Kael nodded. I know, and I've got a crazy idea. He pulled out a small box, flipped the lid open. Inside was a dull silver fragment shaped like a crescent blade attached to a faded emitter core. It looked like a broken child's necklace. Selene froze. You fixed this? Kael scratched the back of his head, awkward. Found it while clearing the far left storage bin. It was stuck between some dead core mounts. I thought maybe I could use the conductor strand to bridge the feedback relay. And if it doesn't work, at least it belonged to you. Selene picked it up gently. It was the last keepsake she had from before the accident. Something she'd thought lost. Now, resting in her palm, it was about to become part of the soul of her new legs. Thank you, she whispered. Not for the tech, but because someone had seen value in what she thought was just scrap. In the days that followed, the two of them worked as if nothing else in the galaxy existed. They ate and slept in the workshop. They argued over circuits until midnight beside the holographic board. They laughed, for the first time, when a programming glitch caused the test leg to kick a toolbox across the room. One night after Kael had fallen asleep at the desk, Selene pulled an old jacket over his shoulders. She said nothing, just placed a hand on his back, and stayed there for a few moments longer, quietly as if afraid to wake something deeper in herself. Sometimes the first thing a person needs isn't a pair of legs, but a reason to stand. Night fell over Erythra Prime like a sheet of thick leaden fog. No moon, no stars, only the flickering lights of old sentry posts, casting long shadows like ghosts across a battlefield the galaxy had already forgotten. Kael wore a radiation-resistant coat, a signal-scanning helmet pulled low over his brow. His figure silent, predatory, moving through the graveyard of dead technology like a lone hunter. In his left hand, a signal jammer. In his right, a digital map, guiding him into the heart of the abandoned military zone, restricted Sector 17. This is it, Kael murmured. Sovereign-class wreck, lower deck, navigation core. Inside lies the pre-war Alliance quantum core, and the one thing I can't build. An early-generation quantum processor, tech once used by the Lavari to control biomechanical war machines. The only system powerful and smooth enough to seamlessly link Selene's nervous system to the prototype leg still under development. The problem was, the zone had been marked Strategic Death Protocol, which meant enter and you're already dead. No warnings. Kael knew that, and he went anyway. No hesitation. As he squeezed through the gap between two scorched hull plates, his communicator vibrated. A hologram flickered to life. Selene's voice echoed in his earpiece. Kael, where are you? He froze, almost shut it off, but then, slowly he tapped his mic. Just going for a walk. Nice breeze, smells like neutron ash. And death. Selene was silent for a moment, then she whispered, You're getting it. For me, aren't you? Kael chuckled faintly. Number, I'm retrieving something they stole from you. Inside the wreck, the world was a labyrinth of charred metal, sparking wires and energy leaks that hissed like dying breath. Kael moved carefully, each step a gamble. The ancient map vibrated, pulsing near the processor's heat signature. Suddenly, crash! A beam gave way. Kael slipped, tumbling through a cloud of metallic dust, slamming hard against the lower deck. Pain tore through his left arm. Blood. He hissed, but crawled forward. With his one working hand, he pried open the casing and pulled out the dull silver processor, the heart of the entire system. Just then, a beam of white light swept across the corridor. Automated scan. He held his breath, ducked into a crawl space. Processor clutched tight to his chest like a mother shielding her newborn in a bomb shelter. A drone flew overhead, then passed. Silence returned. He exhaled, drenched in cold sweat. An hour later, he stood at Selene's door, hair soaked, shoulder bleeding. In his hand, the shimmering processor. Selene opened the door and froze, not because of the blood, but because of his eyes. They weren't on fire. They burned low, steady, like a wind-shielded flame, not meant to be seen, only meant to keep burning. You still have a chance, Kael said softly. And now, it's not about the tech. It's about you. Making someone like me choose the right thing. Some things can only be found by walking into the deepest dark, not to take, but to return what should never have been stolen. Kael lay on his side atop a makeshift medical cot in the corner of the workshop. His left arm was roughly bandaged with radiation-resistant fabric, still faintly bleeding. The quantum processor had been carefully sealed in a thermal shield beside him, like a relic. He wasn't asleep, nor groaning in pain. He just stared at the ceiling, quietly counting the ticks from the gravity stabilizer humming in the far corner. Selene walked in. No noise, no words. She wore no control rig now, just a simple Lavari fabric wrap, her hair tied high and her eyes glowing strangely bright in the dark. She didn't ask why he'd risked his life. She didn't thank him. She simply pulled a chair close, sat down. And the two of them remained silent, as if even the air was afraid to disturb the moment. You know, Kael said softly. When I was a kid, I thought I'd become a strategic officer. Then I realized the only thing I was good at was tearing things apart and putting them back together in ways no one approved of. Selene let out a faint laugh, soft, like a wire brushing crystal in the stillness of night. And I, she whispered, once thought I'd run a climate station in the inner belt. A place with no war, no politics, just pure science. Kael turned toward her, met her gaze. We never ended up where we wanted, did we? Selene replied gently. But maybe. We ended up where we needed to be. Silence returned, but this time it wasn't empty. It was full. Selene stepped forward. She knelt beside the cot. Her hand reached out, touching Kael's, not gripping it, just resting gently. Her palm was cold as crystal frost, but warmer than anything Kael had felt since setting foot on this world. If one day, she said slowly, everything fails, the interface breaks, the legs don't connect, would you regret it? Kael looked directly into her eyes. I didn't go into that military zone for legs. I went because I wanted to see you stand. Even if it's only once. Even if it's just to walk away from here, without ever looking back. Selene leaned forward, resting her head gently against his chest. No kiss. No tight hold. Just stillness. His chest rose and fell beneath her hair, and everything felt lighter, as if the world had paused, granting two weary souls a moment of shelter from a storm that had raged for over a decade. Some promises don't need to be spoken aloud. They live in gentle touches. In the moment someone chooses to stay, when you have nothing left to offer. Dust rain fell over Erythra Prime, a strange kind of rain. No scent, no color, like crystal mist drifting down from an atmosphere gently disturbed by a recent energy surge near the central station. Inside the workshop, everything was so quiet, even the ticking of the clock sounded like it was holding its breath. Selene sat upright in the calibration chair, her hair tied back, her spine straight, her hands trembling slightly. But her eyes were like a blade unsheathed, sharp, bright, and no longer retreating. We're ready, Kael said softly, standing behind the control panel. He tapped the quantum interface. A soft silver light coursed down both mechanical legs, casting reflections on the floor like twin beams of hope, igniting for the very first time. Selene looked down. She felt nothing. And then suddenly she felt everything. A strange sensation rose from the legs, not like foreign machinery, but like a piece of her body awakening after an 11-year slumber. What do you feel? Kael asked, not looking up. It's warm, Selene whispered. Oh, not cold, not numb. It's like my skin is remembering how to live. Kael initiated calibration. The prosthetic legs trembled, then stabilized. The monitor read, neural link established. Stabilization complete. Phase Y ready. Now try bending your knee, he said, heart hammering in his chest. Selene took a breath. She commanded. A signal sparked from her thought, passed through the interface, and the joint bent, smooth, fluid, like real muscle. She choked up, not from pain, but because this wasn't a simulation. She was controlling her body. Again. Kael stepped forward, hand extended. You don't have to stand if you're not sure. Selene looked at him and shook her head gently. Number, I've been sitting for 11 years. If there's ever a moment to begin again, it's now. She gripped the edge of the chair, slightly trembling. She shifted her weight forward. The legs responded, balanced her weight, and then she stood, slowly, stiffly but undeniably. Kael couldn't speak. He could only look at her. Selene Veyra, once considered a discarded scientific failure, a survivor without status, now standing tall by her will and the technology they built together. Selene didn't speak either. She took a step, then another. The sound of her footsteps echoed like drums, not clunky, not broken. Perfect. And then Selene laughed, not a soft chuckle, not restrained, but a full, joyous laugh, like a child running through rain for the first time. Kael stepped beside her. He didn't hold her, didn't steady her. He just stood there to witness it. Every step she took that day wasn't to escape the past. It was to walk toward a life she believed she still deserved. 3 days after her first step, Selene could walk the full length of the workshop. No support chair, no constant monitoring. Each step was still cautious, but they were real. She walked the hall not as a patient, but as an engineer. Kael monitored everything: neural feedback, skeletal frame pressure stability, micro-vibrational tremors. But it was during a full system interface scan that he noticed something else. A second signal. Faint, gentle, but steady. A heartbeat that wasn't hers, and didn't belong to any system he had ever programmed. Selene. Kael turned toward her, voice low. You're pregnant. Time stopped. Selene didn't blink. She heard it clearly. The rhythmic pulse, not from her, but from someone else. Smaller, weaker, but unmistakable. That's impossible, she whispered. Lavari can't naturally conceive with humans. Genetically, biofield-wise, energy resonance, it's incompatible. Kael nodded slowly. Theoretically, yes, but your neural interface, it was restructured by the quantum core. And you... He stopped. Even he didn't believe what was happening. I wasn't ready for this, Selene said, like someone lost in a desert who'd just seen rain. Neither was I, Kael replied gently, then looked into her eyes. But if a life has been created from the two of us, then it can't be a mistake. The AI medic appeared, a translucent hologram revolving slowly around Selene. Biological structure, stable. Developmental matrix, adapting. Genetic markers indicate a level of cellular integration previously unrecorded. Viability 94%. Species, undetermined. Selene laughed, not a bright laugh, but a trembling one laced with disbelief. Kael, is everything we touch doomed to be the first of its kind? He didn't answer. He just sat down beside her. We didn't design this life, he said quietly, but you can choose to nurture it. Selene looked at the mirror across the room. The reflection looking back wasn't a victim or a broken engineer or a biological anomaly. It was a mother. She reached for Kael's hand, or for the first time not to help herself stand, but because she needed something to hold on to. If this child is the first true harmony between our kinds, then we protect it, not for science, but because it deserves to live. Kael squeezed her hand. He didn't say a word. Some lives are never part of the plan, but they arrive to remind us. The universe doesn't run on logic. It runs on the things worth living for. The central market of Erythra Prime had never been a pleasant place. Radiation-laced dust, shouting voices, black market traders, and the damp stench of leaking cargo from rusted old containers. But today, amid the usual chaos, something had shifted. A Lavari woman walked through the market, back straight, silver-toned mechanical legs gleaming faintly, eyes lifted. No hover chair, no support rig, no more hiding. People stopped, not out of fear, but because they recognized her. That's Selene, the engineer from Terra Bloom Station. She used to... No, not used to anymore. Kael stood at a distance behind a booth of salvaged equipment. He didn't interrupt, didn't walk beside her. He simply observed and smiled when he saw Selene's gaze remain steady, unshaken by the murmurs. She walked slowly, each step a quiet declaration. I'm still here, I'm still me, and I'm alive. In the food section, a Lavari child caught sight of her mechanical legs, his eyes lighting up. Are your legs from a warship? Selene laughed. Number. But they carried me out of a war that lasted 11 years. The child didn't understand but smiled anyway. And for the first time in a very long while, Selene felt seen, through eyes that judged nothing. After the market, Kael brought her to the upper floors of the research center, where plans were being drawn to legalize the new technology. The research team from Arthur's station sent a proposal, Kael said, opening a hollow tablet. They want access to the quantum leg designs. Do you want to share them? Selene paused for a long moment, then nodded. If these legs can help someone else stand like I did, then why not? Kael looked at her, a quiet look, full of pride and something deeper left unspoken. That evening, the two sat atop the container roof, where both suns could be seen setting at once. Soft wind, the scent of metal and ozone mingling with stardust. Selene leaned her head on Kael's shoulder, her belly slightly curved now, just enough to hint at a future no longer so far away. I'm afraid, she said softly. Afraid that when this child is born, the world won't accept them. Kael answered just as softly. We can't choose the world, but we can choose how we face it. Selene smiled. Not a guarded smile, not forced but real, like the warmth quietly growing inside her. Some footsteps don't make a loud sound, but quietly. They redefine what it means to exist. The sky over Erythra Prime was darker than usual that morning. A massive shadow swept across the clouds, a high-class warship from the Interlinked Alliance military. No warning, no diplomatic ceremony. Only one message broadcast across all frequencies. We arrive under special directive of the Biotech Commission. You are ordered to surrender the quantum interface prototype and the hybrid human Lavari life form immediately. Kael heard the transmission as he was calibrating the biofield stabilizer for Selene. He froze. They know. His voice was colder than ever before. Selene sat silently, hand resting on her belly. It's not about me, it's the child. Kael nodded, eyes already shifting into tactical mode. And the tech we created. 1 hour later, they stood before the research center gates. The military delegation disembarked from the dropship. 3 officers, 10 armed soldiers, and 1 figure in a silver cloak walking last, eyes sharp enough to pierce through denial itself. I am Commander Renlo. Under Clause 47B of the Biogenetic Accord, any organism with off-standard genetic traits is to be transferred to the Research Authority. Kael stepped forward and placing himself squarely between them and Selene. She is not property, and she is not a research subject. Commander Renlo didn't flinch. And the child? A life form with an unclassified biofield? It's a threat, not a miracle. Selene stepped forward, her voice calm and low. If you think we'll hand over our own blood to a group of engineers in white coats and call that progress, then you've clearly never understood what kept both humans and Lavari alive through war. Renlo paused, just a moment. You speak as if you intend to resist. Kael stepped closer, whispering like a blade sliding from its sheath. I once tore apart the engine core of a battleship to save a single life. You don't want to know what I'm willing to do when someone I love is threatened. The silence that followed cracked like thunder. Renlo raised his hand, signaling retreat. We'll return, with official orders, and if necessary, with force. That afternoon, Kael reinforced the defense grid around the workshop. His eyes never left the sensor readouts. Selene walked over and gently gripped his hand. They'll come for real, won't they? Yeah, and next time, it won't just be words. Selene nodded, placing her other hand over her belly. Then we fight. Kael turned to her. Their eyes met, and nothing more needed to be said. Some things you can afford to lose. But some things, the moment someone tries to take them from you, you're ready to burn the sky itself to protect them. The Alliance warship returned at dawn on the 7th day. No warning, no diplomacy, only presence, heavy as a death sentence, hovering over the skies of Erythra Prime. Kael activated the outer sensor grid surrounding the research facility. Selene, with her fully optimized mechanical legs, stood by the biofield scanner, her movements now so fluid no one could tell where the metal ended and the flesh began. Time to contact, 4 minutes, Kael said. This time, they mean it. Selene nodded, placing her hand on her stomach. Arden. Remember, you weren't born from war, but your mother is ready to fight so you can be born into peace. The military force approached the gates of the research center. But this time, Kael and Selene weren't alone. The people of Erythra Prime, mechanics, retired engineers, black market traders, even those who'd once survived thanks to Kael's salvaged tech, had gathered. Holding welding torches, pulse projectors, and even reprogrammed old droids now functioning as defense units. An old woman stepped forward, yelling in Commander Renlo's face, "These two saved my son with tech your government discarded. If you want in, step over us first." Renlo frowned. "This is a matter of federal concern. We do not seek violence, but we won't hesitate to use it." Kael stepped forward, his eyes burning with a fire that only comes from a man who has nothing left to lose and everything left to protect. You stand on land where every soul here was once abandoned. Don't think we've forgotten how to fight. Selene stood beside him, her legs clicking as she locked the stabilizers into combat posture. Don't push a mother to defend her child with what you call an overreaction. We're not soldiers, but don't force us to become one. An alarm shrieked. A scout unit had attempted to breach the sensor grid, only to be violently repelled by the automated defense web flung back like a storm erupting from the earth. The entire research zone lit up. Kael's defense system activated, layer by layer, silently, relentlessly. Renlo signaled a retreat. His gaze darkened, no longer that of a commander, but of a man who had severely underestimated the courage of those he thought small. That night, Selene stood atop the research center, watching the warship lights retreat across the horizon. She said nothing. Kael joined her, standing by her side. The glow from her mechanical legs shimmered against her belly, where a heartbeat pulsed gently between 2 layers of life and hope. You won today, Kael whispered. We haven't won anything yet, Selene replied. But today, we didn't let anyone walk alone. Some battles aren't fought on a battlefield. They're fought in the moments where people rise. For things power will never understand: love, life, and family. Wind swept across the rooftop of the research center, carrying the scent of ozone from last night's rare quantum rainfall. Inside the biochamber, the lights shifted to a soft golden hue, indicating the internal biofield had entered active labor phase. Selene stood in the assisted birth frame, not lying down but upright, supported by a biostructural harness following the ancient birthing traditions of the Lavari. Sweat beaded across her forehead, but her eyes showed no fear. Only total focus, as if in that moment the universe had narrowed to just two things: her heartbeat and her child's. Kael stood beside her, monitoring equipment in hand. Every shift in the biofield was filtered through the integrated quantum interface, forming a shimmering silver aura that enveloped both mother and child. Interface stable, pressure modulation holding steady. Selene, you're doing it. She didn't respond with words. She just tightened her grip on Kael's hand. And in that moment, every pain she had endured became power. One final contraction. She cried out, not in agony, but in transcendence, as if her soul had just torn open a new door into existence. And then, a cry. High, clear, pure. But at the same time, it sent a pulse through the quantum systems, making every device in the room ignite with light in a brief, radiant resonance. Kael caught the child in his arms. His hands trembled, not from weakness, but because what he held was the first being to carry two civilizations in its blood. The baby's skin shimmered pale green with metallic undertones, hair soft and wispy, part violet silver like the Lavari, part deep brown like a child of earth. But what made the entire room fall silent was the eyes. When the child opened them, they didn't resemble anything they had ever seen. They were eyes that held the galaxy itself. Selene reached out, her voice hoarse. "Give me my child." Kael placed the infant in her arms. A tiny hand brushed against her skin, and the glowing interface calmed as if both biofields had synced into one heartbeat. "What's their name?" Kael whispered. Selene looked down, then spoke. "Arden." In the ancient Lavari tongue, it means the bridge between stars. Kael held her hand. And in that room bathed in silver light, there were no applause, no coronations, and only a family, born in silence. And with it, a new era began. Some beings are not symbols of the past. They are the beginning of what never existed before, because they were born, not from fear, not from war, but from the love of two souls the world once chose to forget. The twin suns of Erythra Prime were setting slow. Amber light spilled across the rooftop of the research center where Selene stood by the railing holding Arden in her arms. A tiny life form bearing two different biologies merged into one. Below them lay the old scrapyard workshop, now transformed into the planet's first legal biotech hub. The walls had been repainted. A new sign hung above the gate. Laser-carved letters read, "Draven Veyra Institute, where the broken walk again." Kael climbed up from the lower level, two steaming cups of tea in hand. He wore no engineer's coat, just a man, a father, messy, grateful, and deeply happy. Selene took the tea, eyes still cast to the horizon. "You know, there were moments I thought I'd never walk again. But now here I am, standing holding my child and no longer afraid of anyone's gaze. Kael didn't speak. He simply reached out, gently touching the back of Arden's neck where the integrated quantum interface pulsed with soft light, matching the child's breathing. He's learning. Every minute, every touch, every laugh is teaching him how to become something no one's ever defined. Selene smiled softly. Maybe. He doesn't need a definition. He just needs to live as himself. Inside the lab, young trainees worked on assembling next-gen prosthetic legs, designs based on the original schematics by Kael and Selene. Some had come from other planets. Some were victims of war. All shared one thing in common. They had once lost faith in their own bodies. Now they were learning to stand again, not to run, but to choose the direction they wished to go. A message flickered onto the interstellar comm board. Initial draft for legal recognition of hybrid bioforms is under review by the Alliance Council. In the future, no one may be called monster just for the way they were born. Kael looked at Selene. You think one child can change the galaxy? She laughed gently. Number but a mother and a father, who dare to stand together that might. Night fell. Selene rocked Arden to sleep. Kael stood in the doorway, quantum light shimmering through his dark brown hair. There were no fireworks, no victory parade, just a small family and a story on the edge of becoming legend. Some stories are not for the strongest nor the smartest, but for those who dare to rise, who dare to believe that love, no matter how small, is enough to change an entire world. There are stories that do not begin with war and do not end in victory. They begin with a broken-winged woman and a man who fixes what the world throws away. They begin with schematics deemed insane, with a single touch in the dark, with a child not yet born, already carrying two worlds within. And then, they don't end in gunfire, not in fallen heroes, but in a single step, one step after 11 years in the dark. Today we are not telling a tale of warships, not of weapons, not of politics, but of love, forged between two souls who thought they could never love again. Of life that existed outside every empire's blueprint, of belief built from scrap metal and hearts that hadn't yet healed. If you're listening to this story, maybe you too have fallen, been left behind. Thought to yourself, maybe I'm no longer something worth keeping. Then remember this. You don't have to be a legend. You just have to be brave enough to take one step, just one. And the legend will write the rest on its own.